Peter, joining Jesus in walking on the water, is one of my favourite passages in the New Testament. It's a passage which gets to the very heart of our faith, of trusting in Jesus with our lives, of taking a risk, a chance, of answering a call with all its seeming dangers. In short, it is a metaphor for how we should live as Christian in the world full of dangers. But let's have a look at the passage as a whole. The scene follows on from those we have been hearing over the last few weeks. The parable of the sower, the parable of the weeds, and all those other short parables. The feeding of the 5,000. Jesus has been busy teaching to vast numbers of people who have been following him around, wanting to hear more and more from him, following his teaching at the Sermon on the Mount. He's like a modern day pop idol. And it's clear that he's becoming weary and needs some recharging of his batteries, both physically and spiritually. We therefore find him at the beginning of the passage dismissing his disciples and sending them on their way to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, whilst he has some quiet time away from them and everyone else up on a mountain praying to his Father. This is the first of the important revelations for us. Even Jesus, in human form, needs some R&R, and also needs to commune with his Father through prayer. We, like Jesus, need to take this example, and first and foremost, we must ensure that we are in a good place ourselves. For a second time, we then read that the boat carrying the disciples is being battered by the waves on the lake. People who have visited the Holy Land have told me that even today, massive storms can suddenly spring up on this inland lake due to winds which funnel down the Jordan, and they can be terrifying. Again, it seems that the disciples are fearful because they are still far from the shore, and if you've ever been in a sailing boat, you will know how difficult it is to reach land when the wind is against you. It requires much skill at tacking and can add many miles to your journey. And this is presumably what the disciples were doing when a ghostly figure comes walking towards them across the turbulent waves. It must have really added to their fear, thinking that their time was up. Then suddenly they hear a familiar voice and a reassurance not to be afraid. Jesus doesn't appear to admonish them as seemed to be the case in the earlier story of the calming of the storm. Perhaps the disciples by now at long last realized the strength and power of Jesus in being able to command the winds and the waves. In fact, Peter has such bravado that he invites Jesus to command him to get out of the boat and walk towards him. Once again, Peter seems to be putting a bit of a show on to try and show to the others how strong his faith is. Jesus responds by beckoning him, saying, "Come." I have a wonderful vision of Peter suddenly getting cold feet at having his bluff called. I'm sure that would be me too. So Peter, having made his declaration, steps out of the boat and surprisingly finds himself able to walk on the surface of the lake. I'm sure he was shocked and surprised, possibly by the extent that suddenly he thinks about what he is doing, realizes the waves are still turbulent, and he starts to sink. Suddenly his faith is put in doubt by the circumstances surrounding him. Surely it's not possible. It goes against nature, and the waves are truly dangerous. Jesus catches him, puts a reassuring arm on his shoulder, and asks him why he has such little faith and doubt. The disciples are reassured that they have been reunited with Jesus and are reminded that he is the Son of God. Don't we all sometimes feel and act like Peter? This story also illustrates and foretells Peter's denial of Jesus too on Good Friday morning. When the going gets tough, Peter's faith seems to evaporate. Jesus knew this in advance, but Peter's intentions were always good, and Peter, being a fisherman, would have known the lake and its weather systems well. In going out to greet Jesus on the water, he would have known the dangers. At first, he puts everything in the back of his mind and simply follows Jesus' call. All is fine, and he has achieved what he really wanted to. He's now walking on water with Jesus. But then he lets his mind start to question the logic of what he is doing, and he starts to sink. And I think we ourselves should learn from this. Not to blindly follow, but to have the faith that when we are called, we will be protected by the one who calls us. And he will never be calling us to do something which is not possible. Faith is about believing and obeying. We will then be able to walk forward and not sink. As our faith grows, like the mustard seed, so we too may be called to greater and seemingly impossible things. I think the message of this passage is simple. Have faith, and it and you will grow.